The shroud is an image of a crucified man with wounds that correspond to the brutality that Jesus of Nazareth experienced.
It's the most studied artifact ever.
Damn.
Like particle physicists, nuclear engineers, they all studied it. Some believe in it, some don't believe in it, but they all agree on one thing. No one knows how they did it.
They do not know what the mechanism is that burned the image on there.
An intense light, atomic.
The image, we believe, was formed by 34,000 trillion watts of energy in 1/40th of a billionth of a second. This is the moment of resurrection.
We have to remember, Jesus left no physical trace of himself on earth. He wrote nothing. There's no archaeological evidence, actually, that he existed. But if the shroud is real, then this is tangible proof that he did.
The Shroud of Turin is the most scrutinized and controversial relic in the world, and once again it has become the focus of intense debate as new scientific evidence emerges. The recent 2025 study has shaken things up a lot, suggesting the shroud could actually be 2,000 years old, clashing with the famous 1988 carbon dating test, which claimed it was made between 1260 and 1390 AD, and led many to call it a medieval forgery. In this study, a team of 102 scientists from the Institute of Crystallography conducted over 600,000 hours of research and employed a cutting-edge technique called wide-angle X-ray scattering to analyze small samples of the shroud. This method lets researchers analyze how linen fibers break down over time, a natural process that happens as the material ages. Dr. Liberato Di Caro, one of the lead researchers, say that this results point to the shroud being 2,000 years old, lining up perfectly with the time of Jesus Christ. And now these new findings reignite one of history's biggest mysteries. Could the Shroud of Turin truly be the burial cloth of Jesus Christ of Nazareth? The research team took a closer look at the Shroud of Turin and compared it to other ancient fabrics, like textiles from the 1st century found at Masada in Israel. Surprisingly, the data lined up. Even more intriguing, the linen used in the shroud was traced back to the Levant region, which is modern-day Israel and Lebanon, adding weight to the theory that it could have originated from the Holy Land. Now, for decades, critics have leaned heavily on the 1988 carbon dating results from labs in Oxford, Arizona, and Zurich, which suggested the shroud was a medieval hoax, dating it to around the 13th or 14th century. But not everyone agrees with those findings. Nuclear engineer Robert Rucker has published several papers highlighting possible flaws in the carbon dating process. And there's more. Dr. Liberato Di Caro believes the 1988 results may have been thrown off by contamination. Why? Well, the shroud was damaged in a fire back in 1532 in Chambray, France. That fire could have introduced newer carbon into the fibers, messing with the dating results. Since 1683, the shroud has been kept in the Chapel of the Holy Shroud in Turin, a space designed by architect Giuranio Giurini specifically to protect it. The first documented appearance of the shroud was in 1354, when it was publicly displayed in the French town of Lirey by a knight named Geoffrey de Charny. But here's the catch. There's no record of the shroud before that, and that's one of the main arguments from skeptics. They point out that if this was truly Christ's burial cloth, wouldn't early church writers or even the Crusaders have mentioned it? In fact, in 1389, Bishop Pierre de Acres wrote to Pope Clement VII, claiming the shroud was nothing more than a cleverly painted fake meant to draw in pilgrims. Microscopist Walter Macron added fuel to the forgery debate back in the late 70s. After examining surface samples taken from the shroud in 1978, he claimed the image was actually painted. According to him, it was made using diluted red pigment mixed with gelatin, and the bloodstains, well, they were simulated with vermilion paint. Sounds pretty convincing, right? Well, that's until you hear the other side. The Shroud of Turin Research Project, or STURP, strongly disagreed to this statement. They pointed out that no binding medium like gelatin was detected and suggested Macron's samples might have been contaminated. Plus, here's the kicker. to this day, no modern artist, scientist, or forger has been able to fully recreate all the shroud's bizarre and intricate features. And the mysteries don't stop just there. The shroud has some incredibly strange characteristics that still baffle experts. For starters, it behaves like a photographic negative. Back in 1898, an Italian photographer named Secondo Pia took the first photo of the cloth. When he developed the negative, what popped out was a highly detailed positive image of a man, something that wasn't visible to the naked eye. Then in the 1970s, researchers using early digital imaging discovered something even more mind-blowing. The shroud contains encoded three-dimensional information. In simple terms, the darker parts of the image correspond to areas where the cloth had more direct contact with the body, forming a kind of 3D relief map. This is important because it helps us to reconstruct a 3D image of Jesus with an anatomically accurate body, with realistic blood flow patterns, and proper three-dimensional perspective. No medieval artist could have pulled that off. In fact, no one knows how to do it even today. And there's more. The image only appears on the very surface of the linen, on the outermost microfibers. It doesn't soak into the fabric, and there are no visible brushstrokes. It's as if the image was somehow scorched onto the cloth, but no burn damage exists. In short, despite decades of study, the shroud's image still defies explanation. As one STURP member famously said, the image has three-dimensional qualities which are beyond man's skill. Medical experts have pointed out something truly unusual about the image on the Shroud of Turin. It shows a body with no signs of decomposition and no distortion from gravity, which you normally expect after death. Even more fascinating is that the bloodstains looked clotted and dried, but they stick to the fabric as if they were transferred directly from a living body. They're mirrored perfectly onto the cloth, almost like a photographic imprint. Forensic studies back up the idea that the body was actually wrapped in the linen, but here's the strange part. It seems to have either been preserved or removed in a way that completely defies natural explanation. Some researchers have even compared it to a kind of instant embalming, while many believers connect it to the resurrection itself. In the end, scientists and historians alike are left with a mystery. The shroud's combination of medical precision, chemical complexity, and image uniqueness is unlike anything we've seen in any known artwork or printing method. And what about the biological evidence for this? Well, extensive chemical testing has revealed something pretty compelling about the Shroud of Turin. The stains on the cloth aren't just red pigment, they actually contain real biological components: blood serum, hemoglobin, and human albumin. Even more striking, the researchers have found high levels of bilirubin, a pigment that spikes in the blood during extreme physical trauma. That detail alone strongly supports the idea that these are genuine bloodstains, not some artistic imitation. And it doesn't stop there. When tested with enzymes, the stains react just like real human blood, adding yet another layer of credibility to the claim that what we are seeing on the shroud is the result of an actual human body. Forensic pathologists have also studied the patterns of the bloodstains, and the results are eye-opening. The wounds match exactly with what we know about Roman crucifixion: bruises on the forehead which line up with the crown of thorns, a spear wound on the right side of the chest, and nail marks through the wrist and feet. These aren't vague or symbolic, they're medically and anatomically accurate. What's even more fascinating, these injuries don't just match the gospel accounts, they align perfectly with what modern medicine understands about how crucifixion was carried out in the Roman era. For a supposed medieval forgery, that level of anatomical detail and trauma-specific accuracy would be nothing short of extraordinary. So how was the image on the Shroud of Turin actually formed? That's the question that has baffled scientists for decades. According to Dr. Paolo Di Lazzaro and his team at Italy's Iena Labs, recreating the shroud's image would require a burst of radiation so intense it would need to deliver 34,000 megawatts per square centimeter, Multiply that by the entire surface of the cloth, and you're talking about an energy release of over 34,000 trillion watts delivered in just 1/40th of a billionth of a second. To put that into perspective, that's more than 40 nuclear reactors running at full capacity, all focused on a single flash that lasted less than a billionth of a second. And yet somehow this burst didn't burn the linen. It only altered the outermost 3 microns of the fiber, thinner than a red blood cell. That level of precision delivered at that speed is something no known natural process and certainly no medieval technology could achieve. And yet somehow this burst didn't burn the linen. It only altered the outermost 3 microns of the fiber, thinner than a red blood cell. That level of precision delivered at that speed is something no known natural process and certainly no medieval technology could achieve. Some researchers believe that that wasn't just a scientific anomaly but a physical imprint of the resurrection itself. Despite all the analysis, debate, and controversy, the Catholic Church has remained officially neutral, neither confirming nor denying the shroud's authenticity as the burial cloth of Christ. But one thing is certain, the Shroud of Turin is more than just an ancient piece of fabric. It's a mystery that challenges both our understanding of science and the depths of our faith. Whether you believe it's a divine relic or simply an unexplained artifact, it continues to stir something deeply human, a longing to understand the past, to connect with something greater, and to seek truth in a world full of questions. And maybe that's the real power of the Shroud, not just in what it is, but in what it makes us ask, feel, and believe.